Hello! Last week we talked about wild horses. Today we're going to talk about domesticated horses. An animal that is domesticated, it is an animal that is tame or has been kept as a pet. There is only one species of domesticated horse, but around 400 breeds within that species. The breeds specialize in everything from pulling wagons and plows to racing for human entertainment. All horses, both domestic and wild, are grazing animals. That is the only characteristic that they have in common. Horses and humans have an ancient relationship. The Asian nomads, probably around 4,000 years ago, used the horse as an essential part of their life. Horses still hold a place of honor in many cultures, and they are often linked to heroic exploits in war. During most of those 4,000 years, the horse was the swiftest, most efficient way of transportation, and it played a vital role in communication by taking messages from one city to another, i.e., mail. The use of horses in war made possible the founding and extension of civilized life. In what ways did horse and human form a relationship? Horses were used to carry mail between cities. In the mid-19th century, mail going from East Coast to the West Coast had to either go over by land, and that took 25 days with a stagecoach, or spend months inside a container ship going around the country. The Pony Express, meanwhile, it had an average delivery time of 10 days. How did they do that? To achieve this remarkable speed, company owners set up a string of nearly 200 relief stations across what is now Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, Nevada, and California. Lone horsemen would ride between the stations at breakneck pace. That's as fast as those horses could go. They switched mounts every 10 to 15 miles, and then handling their cargo to a new courier every 75 to 100 miles. So they rode 75 to 100 miles, gave whatever they were bringing to the next destination to another courier, who then also took it 75 to 100 miles, and they kept doing that night and day. So even some of the couriers had to go at night. Since speed was its main goal, the Pony Express went to great lengths to keep its loads light as possible. Rather than big burly cowboys, they used very small, short-statured people in order the horse to be able to go faster. So the lighter and the smaller you were, kind of like a jockey on a racehorse. Jockeys are not big, heavy people, but they are very short and very thin. The average age was around 20 years old for a courier of the Pony Express, and their weight was between 100 and 125 pounds. That enabled the horse to go fastest. It wasn't unusual for teenagers around 14 years old to be hired as well. They didn't have any ties to family, so they were the perfect type of rider to go those distances, because they could be gone for a long period of time and their families would be able to take care of the homestead without them. The Pony Express didn't come cheap. If you had a letter, or something that you wanted to mail, The average cost was $5 for every half ounce of male. That was a lot of money back then. That's the equivalent of $130 today.
When the horse was first domesticated, it was easily recognizable that there were quite a few different purposes that they could have. Now, while riding horses, you wanted something that was quick and responsive. If you were doing more farm labor sort of tasks, you needed a horse that was heavier and more patient. These heavier and more patient horses would be better to be able to move heavy loads or to plow the fields, and being that they were bigger, they were more steady, and it was found to be more beneficial for them to do the farm labor than it was the smaller and leaner horses. Now, through selective breeding over thousands of years, we were able to get all of the different draft horses that we see today, ranging from the large Clydesdales to the extremely popular Belgians. Now, the draft horse is extremely powerful, with strong legs and a wide body. Because of this impressive amount of strength, they can pull quite a few different things around with little to no hesitation. And not only were they created for that strength, but they were also bred to be very gentle and docile in temperament, making them a wonderful addition to the farm, as well as being able to use for pleasure riding and for competitions.
Draft horses were also used for clearing forests. When the settlers went out west, they had to clear the land before they could build a house, and they had to clear land to grow grass for their cattle and for their animals. Trees were very dense, so horses were a big part of clearing the trees. Horses can typically, horses can typically pull 1/10 of their weight if it's dead weight. That means dead weight means it doesn't have any wheels or anything to help it roll. So if they tied onto the end of a tree and started to pull, they could pull 1/10 of their weight. That's not very much, actually. If a horse weighs 1,000 pounds, that's only 100 pounds. So they got very smart in what they did. So they put wheels, or they put another log under it so that it would roll. Putting that extra rolling under it gave them the opportunity to pull more weight. So when they did that, then the horse could pull 1.5 times their body weight. So the draft horses weigh anywhere between 1,700 and 2,000 pounds. So that gave them a whole lot more weight to pull. So, yes. So that meant that they could pull almost 3,000 pounds. That's a big difference. Horses in the cities, they had different jobs than horses that were, of course, out in the farmland. Some of those jobs were, they pulled delivery wagons. They had fire trucks that they pulled, carriages. They even had taxis that were pulled by horses. And if the city had a canal that ran through it, the horses pulled the barges up the canals, because there wouldn't be the water flow for the barge to float, so the horses had to hook onto the side and pull it up the canal. Police officers also rode horses. It was beneficial to the officers because the horses gave them added height so they could see over the crowds. The crowds also felt secure because they could see where the police officers were. They also used these horses in crowd control because they could go through the crowd and not be pushed over. Horses were big enough that the crowd could not push them out of the way. Remember, they weigh 1,000 pounds. were very effective in breaking up and disbanding unruly crowds. Police animals carry no rank, but they are legally considered officers. So if you hurt a police horse, you actually have hurt an officer, and charges can be filed. The mounted police generally used draft breeds or crosses. That means they took the heavy boned of the draft horses with the lighter boned of, say, a thoroughbred or a quarter horse or a Morgan, and they crossbred them to get those horses that were taller, heavier, but yet were agile. Draft horses also helped to build railroads across the country. And they helped by hauling the machinery needed, the supplies needed, and the people that actually built the railroads. The building of the Transcontinental Railroad opened up the American West for a more rapid means of travel from coast to coast. With the completion of the track, the 3,000-mile journey took a matter of months originally to just under a week with the railroad. The Transcontinental Railroad was built in 6 years, and it was built entirely by hand. The gentle draft breeds, the Clydesdales, Percherons, and Belgians, they made them well suited for working on cattle ranches and for hunting, but their large size made them difficult to mount and dismount. Figure, if you have an 18-hand horse, which was the average size for a draft horse, that's a lot of leg lifting to get up into that saddle. The tallest horse we have, Wendy, is only 15.2 hands. So remember, a hand is 4 inches. So if you add to 18, that's a lot of difference. So what they did was they bred those draft horses that were so useful and strong with the lighter saddle horses, which were used for riding, and they crossbred them. And they got a horse that was stronger, had more stamina, but yet was agile. Those agile horses became very, very important in the West. These agile horses that were crossbred were very important also in the mountain treks. So when, like Lewis and Clark, they were exploring and they were into that rugged country, those shorter statured but stockier, heavier could carry supplies, and they could maneuver in the thick and the mountains. There is a misconception that draft horses, the thick-bodied horses that were used in the cities to pull delivery wagons and etc., there's a misconception that those were used with the pioneers pulling the wagons out west. That is not true. Most settlers used oxen. And the reason they used oxen were horses became tired and lame much quicker than the oxen. A mule could cover 20 miles a day, where oxen only can cover 15. The horses also needed a lot more fuel, energy, grain, grass, where the oxen only needed grass, which was found along the trails, along the roads. So it made more sense to use the oxen versus the horse.